Hi, Gene, you good? Everybody good? Yeah, I'm gonna call back to order regular council meeting number 1572 for December 13th. Again, in honor of the Leeward Cool, the Village of Pemberton acknowledges that we are meeting within the unceded territory of the Leeward Nation. For those members of the public in attendance, please note that this meeting is a live webinar and is being recorded. A recording of the meeting will be available on the village's website following the meeting. Any amendments to the agenda? None. Motion approved. Councilor Craddock, second by Councilor Helmer. Any opposed? Motion carries. Number 6, the rise of the report. We have one item from our in-camera from today. And that is that the request from Tracy Rosapalek to extend the permanent sewing center lease agreement for a subsequent 10 years to expire in 2051 and be approved. Takes us to 7. Adoption of minutes from 7.1, council meeting 1570 and regular council meeting 1571. Moved by Councilor Ramsden, seconded by Councilor Helmer. Any opposed? Motion carries. Any business arising? No business arising from the COW or committee minutes. So we're on to our delegation, which is number 11. We've got some guests joining us on Zoom, so I'll take a second here. There we go. Perfect. Good evening. Thanks to both of you for joining us. When you're all set up there, the floor is yours.
Thank you. So good evening, Mayor Richmond and Council. My name is Anna Lynch and I'm the Executive Director for the Pemberton Arts Council. And this is Joan Risho, who is our board chair. We are pleased to present to the council this evening a brief report of our 2022 year in operation.
And for those of you who may not know us, the Pemberton Arts Council is the primary provider of community arts events and programming in the area, engaging both professional artists and community members by developing programming which supports artistic development across multiple disciplines. Our purpose is to build, promote, and integrate arts and culture into the fabric of the community. In December 2021, we were successful in hiring our new executive director, Anna Lynch, at 20 hours per week to kickstart our COVID recovery plan. We also successfully built up our board from a 5-person team to 10. I joined the board in August, although the other members were elected a little bit earlier. And the current board of directors now has representation from the local school district, the SLRD, and the Naquatqua First Nation. Through the hiring of an executive director, we were able to complete 75% more applications from provincial and municipal granting bodies than in previous years. And this is the second year our organization has received funding from the SLRD PDIF fund, which we are very thankful for. We await decisions from several other grants that have been applied for.
So we have also worked hard to create a greater connection with the community this year and have seen an increase in our membership by 177% and increases in social media followings and interactions. However, our proudest achievement this year is the revitalization and growth of our community program and events, which have increased by 200% from 2020 and 2021 respectively. This year, our organization hosted the Mountain Muse Festival, a 2-day music festival that celebrated local musicians and artisans. The festival saw an attendance of over 600 people and provided showcasing opportunities for 33 paid local musicians and 12 craft vendors. At the end of June, the first ever Outside Voices mural was designed and painted by beloved artist Dave Petco at the Pemberton Healthcare Center. In September, we held our 3rd annual Art Hop, which saw new artwork from 21 paid emerging and professional artists, with several first-time exhibitors and a brand new venue addition and partnership with the Pemberton Museum and Archives Society. In November, we took part in a collaborative project as part of the Sea to Sky Arts Council Alliance to display the touring environmental art exhibition, Diving In, the Art of Cleaning Lakes and Oceans. This exhibit was shown at the Pemberton and District Public Library for 1 month and featured artwork made from trash created by many Sea to Sky artists, including Pemberton artist Joe Salve. We hope to build on our success from this programming with plans to develop a youth mural camp, a large-scale heritage mural, another installment of the Mountain Muse Festival, and a new visual arts exhibit in 2023. We thank you for your time and invite any questions.
Thank you so much.
And we're also just going to put on the screen the document that you have in front of you with some of those stats.
Sure. Thank you. Any questions from council? Or comments?
Okay, we're just, I don't know where it is.
It's we have it in our report. Too,
That's
right?
why we
Okay,
sent
yeah,
it.
we're having trouble finding it on my computer.
That's all good. Doesn't appear to be any questions or comments, so thank you so much, and thank you for the vibrancy you guys bring to the community. I'm sorry I missed your fundraiser the other night. I got stuck in the city, but thanks for all the work you guys do, and thanks for joining us.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much.
Thank you.
Take care.
Good night.
Okay, we're on a 12.1, Office of the CAO, Pemberton Community Center Nature Play Park relocation.
Yeah, in your package, you will find a proposal from Tom Barrett, Landscape Architects. And I'm seeking the support approval council for the scope of this investigation of the place-based location, as well as a resolution to approve the cost of the $7,200 through the daycare expansion grant. Now, when you take a look at it, this is broken down into several different pieces of work in terms of concept. And this could be exactly as it's presented, or we can take some of the pieces out, depending on what council wishes.
All right. Any questions? Comments? How do we feel, Councilor Scraddick?
If I might, through the administrative. We looked at option 2 last time as a potential preferred. Which one is, it's got 1 and 2 here, but which one is 2 compared to what we went to last time?
So I believe the resolution was to investigate 2, but also look at the potential of tightening up option 1.
Okay.
So moving it a little bit closer to the edge of the Great Lawn.
Okay. And there's no plans or anything with it at all?
No, because this is just the contracts for the investigation, and then the plan is that he would come back to
With the
a
plans.
meeting with the couple of approaches, fully investigated to share with you. So
Okay. And would it be less expensive if council has decided that option 2 in our last report was preferred, or?
no, we still have to do the investigation
We'd still
to
have to-
understand if we can actually go there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay,
So I just have the same, I just want to be really clear about it, because when we talked about it before, we didn't want it on the Great Lawn. So we're exploring the Great Lawn still? Is that? what you're saying?
We're exploring option 2, which is the upper right-hand
Yeah,
corner
okay.
next to the spray park.
Yeah.
Which would be the pocket park or the linear park, I
Sure.
called it. I think it straddles both. But the other piece that was talked about was, should that not be a good fit? Could the design be changed or moved slightly in order to put it more on the periphery of the Great Lawn? What's that?
Okay. And so this is just saying, yeah, go do the work, come back with options and maps and stuff. Okay.
And this is just approval of the $7,200 for,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, through your mayor.
Correct.
Yeah, the 7,200 would come out of then the grants funding.
Thank you.
Okay, would somebody like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Support that. Second, and Councillor Nightingale, any further discussion? Any opposed? Motion carries. On to 12.2 corporate legislative services. And we're talking about the electronic and hybrid meeting policy. Spazer.
Mayor and Council, thank you for having me. The purpose of this report is to present to Council the Village of Pemberton electronic and hybrid meeting policy for approval. By way of background, in response to the COVID-19 pandemic under emergency legislation in place at the time, provincial government enabled local governments to facilitate election or council business by electronic means on the short term. In June 2021, the provincial government adopted Bill 10, which is Municipal Affairs Statutes Amendment Act, which extended permanent authority to local governments to conduct regular and committee meetings electronically. In response to the new legislation, Village amended its council procedure bylaw 788/2015 to comply with the new legislation. And one of the things that was recommended by the ministry was that councils, if they do move in this direction, consider establishing a policy. So in April 2022, last April, the Committee of the Whole recommended to council that it would be appropriate to establish a policy to guide the use of new options available through the implementation of the new legislation. And council supported this approach, and staff were directed to develop a policy. In September, the draft policy was presented at the Committee of the Whole, and the committee requested some adjustments under the meeting attendance section specifically, which are highlighted in red in your report. The changes outlined in the report whereby council members are encouraged to attend meetings in person and provides a review process in the event that council members feel a member is utilizing the electronic attendance too frequently and as a way to avoid actually having to attend in person. And establishes that members are encouraged to give at least 3 days notice if attending via electric means. Initially, staff had identified that as 6 days in order to give staff time to be able to prepare and get the notices out. Council felt that that was too short or too long, that life gets in the way. And so we're agreeable to adjusting it to 3 days notice if possible. Obviously, if you can't give it in 3 days, something comes up. We'll do a meeting invitation, panelist invitation. The policy as presented aligns with the provincial legislation, our council or the village's council procedure bylaw, and responds to the requested changes by the Committee of the Whole at the time. And it is before council for approval. I am happy to take it. May have.
Ms. Fraser, questions? Go ahead, Councillor Helmer.
Number 3, is that in the provincial? Did that come from provincial language?
The about the participation, and if
Yeah.
people don't know, that was formed as a result of the conversation that took place at the Committee of the Whole table at the time. There was in the original policy, there was no, or that was presented, there was no mechanism should a council member be taking advantage of attending electronically, and there becomes a concern on the part of the rest of council. So council asked us to put some language in around that. Certainly, there's recommendation through the ministry that you want to have some mechanism to resolve a problem if one comes about. I think at the time, too, one of the concerns that was sort of presented were not only in the Village of Pemberton, but other communities, you were seeing people run for council that didn't live here or anywhere near here. And so what happens if somebody gets elected and they don't live within a reasonable space to be able to get here, and they spend 4 years attending meetings via electronic means because they can't be bothered to come to the community. And so I think a number of communities are grappling with how to encourage or have a mechanism in place where if this becomes a problem, council has a way of having a conversation about it.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, that last part makes sense. I find it a little bit strict and controlling, really.
It's your policy.
Yeah, no, just, open for discussion. And then I just wonder, how do you define what negatively impact? It just seems so open to a strange interpretation. And I feel like too, I mean, in a way it covers it, right? It's reasonable to say you should make every effort to attend in person and use electronic as a last resort if you need to. I just don't, do we need 3? It just seems this is how you will behave.
Sure, yeah, no, and I get the sentiment. I think there was a pretty strong concern that somebody could hide behind, so you're encouraged not to, but for all the reasons Ms. Fraser said that, I feel that the public expects us to be present wherever possible, to be able to be live, especially if there's something perhaps controversial on the agenda, that sort of thing, and people could hide behind it. I don't have any such fear here at the table, but we write policies for preventing certain things. We asked staff to come back and give us something like that. So this is what we've got before us. I don't know if that's the perfect option, but I agree with the intent. I think there should be some sort of mechanism in there to make sure that one doesn't hide behind Zoom. I don't feel that 2 covers that. Encouraging people not to do that isn't always enough. So that's where it came about. Happy to talk about it some more. Councillor Ramsden, go ahead.
But for one way that if we want to balance it is instead of establishing a limit to the number of future meetings, you throw in the word establish a reasonable limit to the number of future meetings so that there's room. But yeah, I mean, it's fairly open-ended and negatively impacted is it's going to be up for interpretation by whoever's sitting around the table. But I do agree with Mayor Richmond's comments that number 2 is it's not really enforceable. You're encouraged to, but if somebody decides not to attend any meeting, it would be very difficult to say, well, according to number 2, it doesn't say they have to be here in person. So
I think the idea behind the way it's worded is that no one person, including myself, the mayor at the time, can decide that it's negatively impact. You know what I mean? Like it's a council discussion to make sure that hopefully it's a reasonable. Go ahead.
if that is the case, then because right now it reads chair or a majority of council members. So right now it does seem that it gives the power to the chair to make that decision unilaterally. So maybe another is to just say if a majority of council members.
I think the idea was that to be able to call it, but that a conversation happens amongst council. So the mayor can't just say, you're not doing this is negatively impacting us and therefore you have to. It means if the mayor at the time felt that way, they would ask for a conversation with council. Does that make sense? Is that sort of how it's Fraser? Is that sort of how it's laid out?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, this is one of those clauses that if you don't put in, gets taken advantage of. If you have it, you can massage it after time if there's a need to. Yeah, I mean, it's the chair who is in this case the mayor. The mayor has the ability to make a whole lot of through legislation and through our procedure bylaw to make some decisions or call a meeting or not call a meeting. So it seems appropriate that it would be the chair, but I would guess that the chair would also want to have the support of members of the council. And that's where, if the chair does decide that, you go in camera, you have that conversation, everybody else around the table may say, no, this is perfectly reasonable.
That's Nightingale.
Thank you. I just wanted to sort of echo what Councillor Ramsden said. I think that putting in a reasonable limit to the number of future meetings would be effective language because it is establish a limit to the number of future meetings is very definitive and you never know what might come up in someone's life or Yeah, so I like the idea of establish a reasonable limit to the number of future meetings in the calendar year.
So if I may, prior to this legislation change, council members were not technically allowed to miss more than 4 meetings in a row, except if you were on a leave or had a medical reason for not attending, in which case you would go through the process to do that. So this change has actually the Bill 10 changes have removed all of those limits, because now you have this ability to attend in other ways electronically. So I see no problem with putting in reasonable. Council always has that ability to say, we think that 6 meetings a year is reasonable, or 4 meetings, or whatever it is that the council as a group decides on is appropriate. Yeah.
Any other thoughts?
I'll move the recommended changes as presented.
Seconder, Councillor Helmer for the discussion. Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, that brings us to 12.3. Development Services, 12.3A, it's a variance to road standard Sun God Mountain Way. Subdivision Development Control Bylaw 677. I think Mr. Chalmers is joining us. Yes, good evening, Mr. Chalmers. Whenever you're ready to speak to 12.3A, Sun God Mountain Way.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and good evening, council. The item before you tonight is for consideration to issue development variance permit number 132. This is on lands that are colloquially known as Sunstone Phase 3. As you can see in the accompanying graphic, Phase 3 is a development that's proposed off the extension of Sun God Mountain Way. The road portion within this plan, identified as Road B, the application tonight effectively seeks to mirror the portion of Sun God Mountain Way, which is already built. The subdivision development control bylaw establishes certain standards. The only means by which those standards can be varied is through a development variance permit issued by council. In terms of background, phases 1 and 2 of Sunstone received a development variance permit for road standards to accommodate hillside development. At the time, the intent was to minimize the amount of cut and fill to handle hillside drainage. The subdivision development control bylaw does not have well-designed and resolved standards necessarily for hillside development. So the village accepted an alternate standard to try to accommodate a different approach to hillside development and minimize some of the impacts. Phases 1 and 2 have since undergone a little bit of expansion. There's been additions to each of those phases on lands that were historically part of the Ridge development, but have been incorporated and accessed through the Sunstone development. And each of those has received a similar variance to what you're considering tonight. So Sun God Mountain Way, the road in question, it was initiated as part of that Phase 2 variance. And this application is effectively to continue the road as it's built. This table, which is in your staff report, identifies all of the variances that are included. As you'll note, the majority of them are quite minor in nature, and they are intended to accommodate a continuation of the road in a way that staff contend meets the overall intent and function of the road as needed. Just again, quickly, this is an awful lot to try to absorb on one slide, but that's a typical road cross section for what the road would look like. In terms of process, the development variance permit application has been processed and advertised in accordance with the Local Government Act and the village's development procedures bylaw. As with all development variances, they're permissive in nature. There are some areas that we understand the applicant may not necessarily have to use for the entire portion of road, but for the sake of consistency, we've replicated those permissions in this permit. So it would enable a reduction down to the amount identified in the variance, even if not all of that is needed. Some of this would be confirmed through the ultimate engineering design and approvals at subdivision. I will note that in July 22nd of 2022, this phase 3 did receive a tentative layout approval letter from the approving officer. This variance is one of those conditions should they wish to pursue the alternate road standard, but we anticipate that the subdivision, once this variance is in place, there's some other approvals that have been granted or are in the process of being granted, and the subdivision will conclude in a reasonable time. So with that, as this reflects a continuation of an existing road, staff are comfortable recommending approval, and the staff recommendation is that council authorize issuance of development variance permit number 132 to 1293566 BC Limited, the owner, to vary the Hillside Collector Road standard for a portion of Sun God Mountain Way. So with that, Mr. Mayor, I'd be open to any questions that council may have.
Thank you, Mr. Chalmers. There were questions. Councillor Ramsden and Councillor Craddock.
Through the mayor, just to clarify, the table that you've provided, so under this variance is one of the changes that's going to be happening is that it's going from potential street parking to no street parking. I just wanted to clarify if that was part of the variance.
Mr. Mayor, through you, yes, that is correct.
Good. Craddock.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chalmers, for the report. In the end of your report, you say the application also eliminates the bylaw requirement for mid-block turnaround cul-de-sac. Is that it's going to be a situation as far as fire truck access and egress goes? Sorry?
And snow clearing.
And snow clearing, yeah.
Mr. Mayor, through you, certainly fire truck turnaround and snow clearing will be requirements of the engineering approval. They always are. One of the ideas we've had is eliminating some of the cul-de-sac turnarounds as road allowance and instead looking towards statutory rights of way, which may not be required in the future. Again, some of the issue here is that there is a variance to the cul-de-sac length that is required. The variance is not the design of the road. It's really just the exceptions to the bylaw. So there will be other elements of the design that will go through the standard engineering process, like snow clearing, like cul-de-sac, the mid-block turnarounds and so on.
Thank you.
Councillor Ramsden, go ahead.
Just coming back to the parking then, is there any concern then if, I mean, if this is what it seems to be is that at least for this stretch of road, we're eliminating street parking. So is there any concern that, you know, should people have friends over, et cetera, I mean, is there, I guess, a plan for dealing with the parking that is going to be lost through the street parking, if that's a concern at all?
Mr. Mayor, through you, I believe it's one of those trade-offs again that have historically been taken between minimizing the cut, fill, and clearing required for road construction. Road construction is one of the more challenging aspects of hillside development because not only do you need to clear for the road itself, there's additional clearing for the side sloping and the retention and everything else that's required. So the overall approach has been to minimize the amount of road, and the elimination of parking was one of those decisions that's been taken throughout this project. There are a couple other considerations in this stretch of road is this road is intended to function more as a collector road, and it's not as common to see street parking requirements on collectors. And finally, phase 3 is a large lot format. These lots are substantially bigger than most of the other lots we see so far in Sunstone. The development permit, which has been approved, does appear to provide more than ample parking areas. It's not parking design, but parking areas for each of the lots. So staff are not concerned about the street parking in this section of Sun God Mountain Way.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any more questions?
Just a quick one. Thanks, Cam. Have there been any other variances given for parking?
Mr. Mayor, through you, not for parking in terms of the on-site parking or the off-street parking. In fact, these lots will have probably the ability to accommodate much more than most of the lots. So there's no parking variance in terms of the development. The variance that's proposed mirrors what has been done in earlier portions of the roadway. So by eliminating the street parking, staff are confident there will be ample parking. And again, in a hillside context, it's not clear whether street parking would be necessarily desirable to begin with on a collector road.
Okay. Any comments?
So
Would you like to make a motion?
with that, Mr. Mayor, it would be appropriate as a development variance permit, the applicant is present if they wish to say a few words, or if any members of the public have expressed an interest.
Thank you, Cam McIver, 3556. Thank you, Mayor and Council, for a council meeting that has been in front of this one, I think 7th or 8th council for me, somewhere along there. This narrowing of the road width was discussed after the 2011 zoning was done many years ago, with 3 years of negotiating with ISL and staff at the time, that Karen Lamont was the planner. And the larger lot format and the longer driveways allow for ample parking. I concur with staff on that. We're going with a wider sidewalk, 2.1 meters, much on that slope. It's much easier to get chariots and bikes back and forth without. So we're voluntarily going to a wider sidewalk. The lanes are not technically being reduced when you include the gutter line of the curb and gutter. It's one of the first projects that's incorporated full gutter and curb and gutter and storm. And then the road width from 21 to 20 is negligible, but these things all add up when you do a 1.5 to 1 cut slope, like Mr. Chalmers mentioned. Those things just keep pushing the land back. So it's very consistent with what we've done up there with these large lots. Parking, I'm very certain is not an issue. And in terms of the variances there, I would say not nominal, but they are fitting with everything that's been done in the past up there and continuing with that.
Thank you. Any questions? Would somebody like to make a motion? Anyone?
Yeah, I'll move that we approve the variance.
Authorize the issuance of the DVP to vary the hillside collector road standard for a portion of Sun God Way. Moved by Councillor Craddock, seconded by Councillor Nightingale. Further discussion? Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Chalmers. Yes, John. We're on at 12.3B, the official community plan and zoning amendment early and ongoing consultation. Colin is joining us on this one.
Is he on? Oh, there he is.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Can you hear me?
You sure can. Go ahead, Mr. Brown, when you're ready.
Excellent. 1 second here. Okay. So good evening. So the purpose of this report is to introduce this application. It's for an OCP and zoning amendment for property located at 7362 Pemberton Farm Road East. So the real purpose of the report is to ensure that the village meets its obligations from Section 475 of the Local Government Act in regards to early and ongoing consultation for an OCP amendment. So I really want to emphasize, so I will provide a brief overview of the project, but the real intent for tonight is to make sure that we've established our consultation obligations. So the property is located just south of the Dundalk Park, the recreation site, and north of the Plateau neighborhood in the area shown in red on the map. Access is via Pemberton Farm Road East from Highway 99. Then you would turn right into a to-be-developed short road to access the site. The site is what we would describe as a brownfield development in that the property has been formally disturbed as a quarry. And so differentiated from a greenfield site, that would be relatively untouched. So the proposed concept is for a 35 lot subdivision. 34 residential lots would be ranged from 300 square meters to just over 950 square meters. And the one commercial lot proposed would be at the corner of Pemberton Farm Road East, right where the right turn would happen into the site. The current zoning is resource management. So this is a legacy from the quarry, and it only allows for forestry and resource extraction as uses. And so to proceed with this proposed development, zoning amendment is required to establish residential and commercial uses. As with all zoning amendments, they must be consistent with the official community plan. So when we go there, we find that this parcel actually does not have a designation. This is a legacy from when the property was part of the agricultural land reserve, and when it was not within the village boundaries. It is, however, part of the Hillside Special Planning Area, a product of several studies that looked at how development could progress in this area. And much more information on that will be brought forward in a future report when we bring the actual application forward for consideration. But again, the purpose of this report is for the consultation process. So I'm not going to read all of this, but so this type of report, we often refer to this as a Section 475 report. And so this is the section of the Local Government Act that mandates what the village is required to consider for OCP amendments. And so there's requirements here for the First Nations, for Lil'wat Nation, for adjacent jurisdictions, school boards, the Pemberton Diking District, and so on. And I'll touch on paragraphs 3 and 4 in a little bit. Since this parcel used to be in the ALR, it seems prudent to have them on our list. So this is our list of for referrals to ensure that these obligations are met. Lil'wat Nation, and then the list of jurisdictions that correspond to Section 475. The Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure is involved via the Transportation Act, which requires development applications to be referred for anything within 800 meters of a highway. So that triggers this requirement. And then the remaining ones, the Trails Association, with the amount of recreation in the area, we felt that they would be a could provide good commentary for this application. Chamber of Commerce, with the introduction of a commercial site in this area, and then the two utilities, which are fairly standard for this process. So in addition to the Section 475 of the Local Government Act, the village has its own development procedures bylaw. This builds upon the legislative requirements. And one of these, which was paragraph 3 in the Local Government Act, is the village has the ability to require a public meeting to be held by the applicant before the public hearing process starts. Now, this applicant did go ahead and hold an information meeting on November 1st. Happened to be the same night as our inaugural council meeting. And while we're always encouraged by the applicants taking the initiative to hold engagement, we felt that with the conflict with council and then the venue, we would we put forward a recommendation for an additional public information meeting to be held, which would follow the notice requirements in our procedures bylaw. And just the comments as well on the venue should be accessible. We acknowledge that Sunstone Golf Course is a good venue. However, it can be difficult to get there if you don't have a vehicle. So that's the background for that recommendation. And then once the referral process is finished and we receive our responses and the public information meeting is held, we would summarize everything and bring that to the Advisory Land Use Committee or Commission for their comments before wrapping it all up and bringing it to council for consideration of the application.
Thank you, Mr. Brown.
So there's two options. So a very brief one. Option one, there's a detailed recommendation on the next page. Then option two is if you feel that there should be a change or two, we're definitely take council's direction on that. And then, yeah, big long recommendation, which I won't read, but the first part formally requests the additional public information meeting. And then the second piece confirms a list of referrals for agencies.
Awesome, thank you.
Go.
Any questions?
Thanks, Colin.
Scott, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm wondering, it's kind of a three-part question here. So the first part, is it going to be a strata?
Yes, through the mayor, yes, the intention is that it would be a strata development.
To follow up on that, then will we do the same as we have with Tayada? Will their suites will not be allowed?
Yeah, so with respect to the details of the development, we haven't gotten down to those details yet, and what could be brought forward as part of the bylaw that comes after. I would say we definitely look forward to hearing from the community when we and through the information meeting and through the different agencies to hear what they have to say about this proposed development.
Thank you. Yes, the reason I'm asking that is because with small lots, again, we run into the parking situation. So that's what I wanted to ask. And the last item would be, I see the sizes of all the 34 residential lots, but it doesn't give any size for the commercial lot. Do we know how large that's going to be?
It is quite a bit bigger than the residential lots. I would have to look up exactly what the area is for that. All of that will be brought forward in the next report. There's a conceptual layout of the subdivision and whatnot.
Okay, thanks. Because I'd just like to know how large someone's going to potentially put a commercial space in. Thanks very much.
Okay.
Any questions about the process? Comments? Go ahead.
Thank you. I just want, I appreciate that it was acknowledged that the public consultation process maybe wasn't detailed enough. And I just want to acknowledge, and I appreciate that that is going to be taken to another level, and all the interest groups and people involved are going to be more involved. So thank you.
Awesome, thank you. Okay, if there's no further comments. Would somebody like to make the motion as presented? Councilor Homer, seconded by Councilor Ramsden. Further discussion? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Brown. We're on to 13.1. Parking and traffic control amendment, ITDC. Thank you very much. You guys later.
Good night. Merry Christmas.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you for having me tonight. The purpose of this report was to propose a change of the Village of Pemberton's parking traffic control bylaw, number 840, which was adopted in 2018. The current bylaw establishes that tickets were given to vehicles if they weren't insured, and for visual, ICBC was issuing a decal, which would have that date and year on each vehicle. But in May of this year, ICBC made the change to stop issuing those decals. So virtually there's no proof of insurance by first glance. So because of this change, I've proposed amendments to clause 1.4 sub R sub II and clause 12 sub 2 sub I by removing the reference of decal to reflect the change. It's a very simple change because all we do have to do is remove the word decal and it still reads as an insured vehicle. Staff is recommending giving the amendment bylaw first, second, and third readings this evening. And this concludes my report. Thank you very much, and I'm happy to take any questions if you have any of me.
Thank you.
Yes.
It's very nervous. I'm glad it's you in here because I was sweating.
We couldn't tell. Flawless.
Yeah, truth.
Thank you for your presentation. Any questions? Go ahead, Councillor Craddock.
Yeah, thanks very much. How do we tell now if a vehicle is insured other than phoning in a registration number or something? That seems unusual.
I think that it's through the mayor. There are two ways to do it. CPIC, which is Canadian Police Information something, is available to civilians. And I actually didn't know that. You can actually call CPIC or you can CPIC somebody on, you can only get limited information with that. But I do believe that that is available to civilians, but I have to actually call ICBC and run all of the plates or VIN numbers, depending on what's available for information for me. But it's just part of a process that I would have to do anyway to verify that the actual tag and decal and date were valid in the first place. So basically, it's just taking the visual out and the work still remains.
Oh, okay. Thank you for that.
Good question.
I mean, I see decals with April on it.
I know it's.
And you
it
go,
is-
well, it's due. Well, no, it's not due.
It's not due. It's, police have to do the same thing. There's also larger places are, they have scanners. So you can take a scan of the license plate. And it gives you information regarding that as well, but that's just, it's a bigger city type of issue, so. Work still remains and it's basically just a housekeeping, tighten up the language. So there's no interpretation, oh, I didn't have a decal, you didn't need a decal, so all of that is gone. And it's just flat out, make the phone call.
Thank you very much.
You know.
Thank you. Would somebody like to move first, second, and third reading? Councillor Elmer, second by Councillor Craddock. Any opposed? Motion carries. You see, it has to be a good presentation. When you get a unanimous vote, that means you killed it. So.
Go do some.
Yeah.
And I don't know how to sit myself on the table.
We all look down and then you just. Thanks, Lisa.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Awesome. We're on to 14. Mayor's report. First up, was a recommendation in your report about moving the time for the regular council meeting scheduled for Tuesday, February 7th from 5:30 PM to 9 AM to accommodate potential travel down to the elected officials forum. Any comment? Would somebody like to move that we adjust the meeting time? Councillor Craddock, second by Councillor Ramsden. Any opposed? Motion carries. For the rest of my report, attended PVIS, but I'm going to refer to Councillor Ramsden to report out on that. And as an early holiday gift, I'm gonna just give you the shortest mayor's report.
Christmas.
Yeah, I know, it's really tempting to drag it on just because of you. But I'm not,
See my report.
but I'm not going to. Any council reports? None?
Right, if you want.
Did I catch you off guard?
Yeah, you did, first time, like, what to be.
Sorry about that. I should have.
No, it's okay, I will. If anybody would like to go first.
No, we'll wait on this.
It was mostly the PDIF fundings.
The grant fund.
It was just,
Oh, yeah.
it was mostly just around the grant fund application. We had a couple delegations.
Oh, right, yeah, no, I mean, we spoke with this too. Yes, we had a few, sorry, okay, going to PBUS. We had a few delegations come in, several were approved for funding, there's a couple that we had gone back to staff, or one, I believe, that we went back to staff with and asked them to work with the proponent to amend their proposal so that it was more in line with the policies and decisions. I believe that was sentiment. Thank you for that. Yeah.
And a little, thank you, and sorry, I generally like to let others, or not let, but give opportunity for others to report out on meetings that I'm there with, because people get tired of hearing me, so. But, sorry, I should have given.
Oh, no, actually, I should have been able to do that, but I was just drawing a blank, especially since, we had talked about it and there's items. Yeah. Guys.
Awesome, and a little birdie just told me that it's Ted's birthday.
Sing.
Happy birthday, Council Craddock.
That's a pretty good response. I got it.
Awesome. Correspondence for action. We have 4. First is from Martin Simon, President of the Pemberton Healthcare Foundation. Requesting a contribution in an amount determined by council to be made from the Community Enhancement Fund to the Pemberton District Healthcare Foundation to support the annual fundraising campaign. We supported this through the CEF before?
No, we've never had a request, actually. What we've done in the past is supported through attending the golf tournament and that kind of thing. I did actually speak with Ms. Simon, and she indicated that they haven't kind of done a campaign like this before. And so they're trying to reinvigorate the foundation and thought that this might be a good opportunity. I understand that this has gone out in the community to organizations and businesses, and they're just kind of throwing it out there to see what they might be able to get in terms of support. We do have funding available in the Community Enhancement Fund. We have about $1,200 left. So if council wanted to make a contribution this year, there is some funds available.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for that information. Any thoughts? We would like to make a contribution from the Community Enhancement Fund.
I'm happy to make a motion.
Go ahead, Councilor.
I'll make a motion that what is the amount?
They didn't.
They
provide
didn't.
one.
Okay, there's one.
You gotta come up with one.
Small,
What is our account balance?
1,200.
Right. And do we anticipate other requests going forward?
Well, we're now at the last council meeting in December,
yeah.
so we're pretty, we don't get as many requests for Community Enhancement Fund now that the PDIF, the Pemberton and District Initiative Fund is providing more long-term funding and bigger amounts. So we kind of hold the Community Enhancement Fund for little things like this. We give contributions to the food bank for food baskets and that kind of thing. So we gave the food bank and the Lilwat Christmas Bureau $500 each this year. So if you wanted something to start with. Yeah.
Your motion.
So, well,
$489.60.
if we don't go the full 1,200, are we carrying that over? Or
Pardon?
do we lose it? We carry it.
No, we
over.
carry it over.
Oh, we do, okay, okay. What are you thinking?
No. You said you wanted to put the motion on. It's yours.
Full 1,200, yeah.
Okay, motion to donate 1,200 from the CEF, seconded by Councilor Nightingale. Further discussion? Opposed, motion carries. Way to perform under heat there.
Yeah, you bet.
16.2, BC Public Relations Girl Guides dated seeking support for the guiding lights across BC.
No money left.
Yeah, they're not looking for money, but
Looking for blue lights.
some members of council may recall that last year, staff were directed to try to find somewhere to light up in blue. And we did have a conversation at staff, at the staff table, and Ms. Burns at the community center has graciously found the right kind of venue. I think we're going to be lighting up a big tree. And we're very fortunate that she is also very involved with Girl Guides, so it kind of fits nicely. And she said that they'll be quite thrilled with a tree lighting.
Nice.
Mhm.
Any idea when?
On February 22nd, the Guiding Lights Day.
I'm sorry, I missed it.
So that will be arranged, and she indicated that we would be able to do this continuing going forward, so. As well, we'll put a message in social media.
Somebody like to make the motion in support of that? Councillor Craddock, seconded by Councillor Ramsden. Discussion? Any opposed? Motion carries. 16.3 is from Community Futures House Sound. It's a rural economic diversification infrastructure program grant application, and they're looking for a letter of support from the Village of Pemberton. Somebody like to move providing a letter of support for this initiative? Councillor Helmer, seconded by Councillor Nightingale. Discussion? Councillor Craddock?
Yeah, reading through there, and spending quite a bit of time looking at it, I can't quite figure out what they're gonna provide that we don't get out of Tourism Pemberton or the local Chamber of Commerce. So I was hoping someone could help me, because I used to be on Community Futures for 10 years, and I thought I could kind of look through here and figure out what exactly we were gonna get out of it, and I'm sorry, I'm still perplexed. I'm not too sure.
I think this would support the work in Tourism Pemberton. I think it's a little more specific to just the outdoor adventure side of things as opposed to general tourism or Tourism Pemberton in terms of their actionable, their actual deliverables. I'm not too sure. Yeah. Go ahead.
If I understand it correctly, this is something that has been developed as a result of a very successful program that's in the Kootenays, where they took where a number of business providers and people who make outdoor equipment and outdoor clothing and that kind of thing, and support the outdoor industry through apparel and supplies and that kind of thing. Have come together, and they're working as individually. They brought all of these businesses together. They work as a group to promote what they offer. And so the intention is to through SOAR is to bring everybody through the Sea to Sky who offer this kind of who make products or that kind of thing. And so they've got a group that they work through. So it's like a sort of a one stop. They'll promote together, and they'll have those kind of activities and things that happen to help promote not only the businesses in Squamish, but businesses in Pemberton or up in Darcy or wherever in the corridor. So that's my understanding. And so this funding will help bring that group together and give them the wheels to be able to launch their organization. It's a nonprofit.
Councillor Nightingale, then Councillor Ramsden.
Thank you. My understanding is that it's because you're mentioning tourism, but it's more diversifying into apparel and sort of the subsets of the spin-offs of tourism, if you see what I'm saying. And I appreciate the idea of having it a Sea to Sky initiative as opposed to just us, them and doing it together. And my understanding is that it's well, I think it will. The Kootenay example has been very, very successful. And I think that supporting these kinds of initiatives are just enriching tourism in general, I would say. Yeah.
One comment just on the letter, I do realize, so in their specific request, they're saying this letter is to request a letter of support from the Village of Pemberton and a commitment to partner on the project either through in-kind benefits such as providing access, needing space and or et cetera, et cetera. So I just want to clarify what we are voting on here, the resolution is to provide a letter of support, not that, I want to be very clear, not saying that I am against committing to them as a partner, providing in-kind benefits, but to my mind, I would think we would want to see specifics of what they're looking for before we say yes.
That's right.
Yeah, no, fair comment, and that was their template for a
Yeah.
letter, but it's our resolution to write the letter. How we see fit, so great comment.
Yeah, so what, and you'll see this again in the second letter, because this is what the REDIP program requires. If you're gonna have letters of support, they're looking for partners. Part of that whole REDIP program is bringing partners on board. When we talk about in kind, there, what's been reflected to staff in conversations with both Mr. Hale and Ms. Barnes is something like if they were coming up here to do a bit of a trade show or something, offering up space for at no cost. And so one option might be they come up and they want to do a bit of an event in the barn as a nonprofit. They would get the nonprofit rate anyway, but that rate would be waived. The park use permit and the rental would be waived. The park use permit for nonprofits $35, so I would waive it. So that kind of in-kind support is what my understanding is that they would be looking for if it's required. But it is up to council whether you want to just provide a letter of support or if you're prepared to offer up the in-kind. I do know for the food system one, there would probably be some staff time involved. Probably not so much with the SOAR.
And when I was reading through that, and that was one of my concerns, it says in kind up to $4,000.
So
Which is a big number to start with, but then if you look at the partner benefits and what they're looking for. $3,000, $5,000 and $10,000.
they haven't asked for specific money.
No, I realize that, but that's in the partner benefits program that they're putting forward. Of course, we couldn't decide that till budget next year anyway, but. Up to 4,000 in kind is seems like a fair chunk, but because it's always coming back to staff time is what it is.
Well, yeah, I mean, for SOAR, I don't know that we would, that there's be a big commitment on part of staff. They would probably be looking for maybe a room in the community center or that kind of thing, but it will still have to go through the process that has now been put in place. So council could, if you wished, just provide a letter of support and not commit to the in-kind.
I think I would like to give a letter of support, but I would really appreciate also hearing from them. If someone from the organization or the group can come and speak to us about it personally, I would appreciate that.
We can ask them, we can see if we can set them up to come to a future meeting. The council provides a resolution.
Sure.
I move the letter of support for their application.
Discussion. And that's just the letter of support, right? Any opposed? Motion carries. Did you want to put a motion in the book to back staff? Have the group come back and report to us down the road, deliverables?
Well, I certainly don't want to create work for staff. So,
They have their presentation, which
yeah,
they'll come and present.
but
They're not asking for us to be a partner at this point.
no, I recognize that. Yeah.
But they probably will if they get anybody to council.
How about we see?
I guess what I'm getting at is I do feel like these sorts of initiatives have a lot of potential. That's all I'm saying. But the letter of support is it's fine for now.
Believe it or not, if they
We
do,
can dive deeper later. Yeah,
especially if they do look for their partnership.
exactly. Yeah.
Okay. Did I call the question?
Yes, you did.
16.4 is from Gabby Barnes, food system manager from the Squamish Food Policy, also requesting a letter of support for the Rural Economic Development Infrastructure Program grant application.
So if I may, Colin Brown is representing the village at this group. So they have meetings 2 or 3 times a year. So Mr. Brown is attending on behalf of the village and bringing back information. So again, they are looking for funding for their program, through the same program. And they are more likely to be up here and doing things. And they are asking for an in-kind support, but again, up to council as to whether or not you want to provide that in-kind support or just a letter of support at this point. We do have our planner attending their meetings and supporting their work.
I've also had some conversations with Ms. Barnes and attended a meeting, and I think there's a lot of value personally for food security through what the work that's being done there. And there's some good value there personally. Any thoughts or motion? Would you like to move support, letter of support?
I'm with the letter of support, yeah.
Second by Councillor Nightingale, further discussion.
Since we're already providing in kind, do we want to articulate that, or is it not important?
Well, I would
Are we
say.
getting into the same sort of sticky,
Mm.
what is in kind?
Well, what they're a little more specific. It's, donations of time and or space for the convening of meetings, outreach and open houses, which may occur in Pemberton. I think our staff contribution could,
Yeah, I think
could meet with that.
contribution definitely suffices it.
Yeah.
I would imagine that there would likely be involvement from Mr. Brown if should they come here, because there's also a component of this that sort of feeds into the OCP.
Sure.
So.
Yeah. I'll just leave the motion.
Call the question, any opposed? Motion carries. We have 3 correspondents for information. Would anybody like to pull any of them out?
Stephen Plow.
Second. Councillor Helmer, discussion, any opposed? Motion carries. Decision on late business. Late business, we have none. Notice of motion. Question period. The regular council meeting is now open for questions from the public. Please be reminded that only questions directly related to items discussed during this meeting are permitted. If any members of the public attending via Zoom wish to ask a question, please click on the raise hand during the webinar controls, and that will notify staff that you'd like to ask a question, and they will unmute your microphone when it's your turn to speak. Do you have any questions?
We have 2 questions, one from James Bank and one from Nikki Banker. So I'm gonna start with Nikki.
Are you, there we go. Hi.
Hi, my name is Nikki Van Kirk, 1347 Elmwood Drive. I've got a question about the Parkside development. Mr. Chalmers mentioned that the ALC would be included in the referral list, and I wondered if anyone knows what the status of that parcel is. Is it already excluded? Does it have a non-farm use because of recreation? And would that be different now that it's going to be residence?
It is already excluded from the the agricultural land reserve. I think staff's idea was, seeing as how it was part of the reserve previously, that the ALC would be nonetheless a good referral group to send this to.
And do you know if it was excluded to be used with the recreation? Like, it seems like they often don't want to exclude ALC land or land in the reserve that for housing. And now we're taking something that was, resource based and putting in a whole whack of houses. I wondered if that's
No, it wasn't. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. It wasn't part of the recreation exclusion. It was excluded through the SLRD process. I don't know how many years ago. Can you?
A number of years ago, because it has resource extraction zoning, so it would have been excluded many years ago.
Yeah.
If it was even, it would have been excluded many years ago when that land was within the SLRD.
And so right now, because of that, it's still, when it came in, it still got to the existing zoning attached to it.
okay. And then when he mentioned it's under the hillside planning area, I think that was the word. I wondered about that since it's not actually like on a hill or, it's adjacent to the hill. I wondered if that's the appropriate planning area, since I think those areas come with, specific things that are appropriate for hillside development, whereas this one is not really.
Sure. Thanks for the question. I'm gonna defer that to staff. I believe Mr. Brown is still on with us.
Colleen raised his hand. He may want to.
Can you bring him on, please?
Yep.
Stand by, Ms. Van Kirk.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Did you be able to capture that question? You're on mute.
Yes, so the hillside special planning area is identified on one of our OCP maps. So it doesn't necessarily have the literal definition of hillside. So in this area, it includes the plateau, the entire area around the rec site, and then the Sunstone and Ridge neighborhoods. So it's a collection of it's that whole collective area. And going back to the previous question too on the ALR, so that changed in 2013. This parcel was excluded at the same time as the rec site was granted non-farm use status. That all happened around the same time in 2013.
Okay, thank you.
Kirk, does that answer your question? Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Do we have somebody else you said?
Yeah, we have a question from James Frank. I'm gonna keep calling you because I wanted to.
Sure.
Do you want to read it out?
Just gonna try.
Okay.
Okay.
He's not moving. Elena, you got him? He has asked a question under the,
So.
want to just read it out maybe?
Mhm. So he said that at the initial public consultation, it was suggested to reduce the number of lots to provide more parking and green space. Is that plan changed to move forward?
So which application are we speaking to?
Parkside.
For the Parkside. Mr. Brown, did you catch that?
I'm sorry, I didn't. It was regard to something, the parking or.
Read it again,
Yeah,
maybe slowly.
so James Frank is asking that at the initial public consultation, it was suggested to reduce the number of lots to provide more parking and green space. Is that plan changed to not moving forward?
Yeah, okay. So staff have received a summary of the comments from that initial public information meeting. We're not really at the point to really dive into too many of those details as of yet. So I would say that they've definitely been received and they'll be considered when this application is brought forward at a future council meeting.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thanks very much. Okay, if there are no more questions, thank you, Mr. Brown. Thank you, everybody. We're going to, I need a motion to go back in camera, please. Councillor Craddock, seconded by Councillor Helmer. Any opposed? Motion carries. We'll just take a couple minutes.
We're recording.
Okay, I'll reopen the regular council meeting.
6:57, yeah.
And I'll look for a motion to adjourn the regular council meeting. Councillor Craddock, seconded by Councillor Helmer. Any opposed? Motion carries. Have a good trip. Thank you very much. Have a great holidays, everybody. Yeah.
Yeah.